right, welcome in to Send It In, a happy Wednesday here on the BetQL Network. Send It In presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, PJ Glasser. Great show for you guys coming up today. We'll get into NFL. We'll continue talking about college football, dive into some of the other bowl games that we are betting. Also some college basketball. We'll look at some futures here on this Wednesday. It's a massive week in college basketball because the Week 6 AP poll has dropped and 100% of the national champions since 2004 have come in the top 12 of the AP poll. So we'll look at those teams and pick out some futures bets. We also have Matt Horner joining us later on the show for Model Making Money, and then we'll wrap everything up with our favorite plays of the day. As always, any questions, comments, best bets that you guys have for us, let us know. Send them in to us. You can go to twitch.tv/BetQL or YouTube.com/Odyssey Sports. If you miss any part of the show over the next 30 minutes, we got you covered. The Send It In podcast, it's available wherever you get your podcast. Also, you can watch the show on YouTube. You just search Send It In as well. Let's get this thing rolling. Glasses in session. We go to the Glasser guest line. We welcome back Gene Battaglia, co-host of the Sports Bar, 3 to 6 p.m. weekdays on 95.7 The Fan in Rochester, to talk some Buffalo Bills who have the game of the week and maybe the game of the year in the NFL. Bills and Lions in Detroit. It's going to be an epic one on Sunday. Gene, just your initial thoughts watching these two teams. Very well could be a Super Bowl preview going at it on Sunday.
Oh, we would love it if that was a Super Bowl preview for sure, PJ. This is going to be a lot of fun. But still, the discussion here in Western New York is what was that we saw out of the Bills defense and special teams and the clock management. So if the fan base, if we're still kind of dwelling on these things, I mean, can the team turn the page here? Because where the Rams offense is looking much better these days, now you're getting the cream of the crop here going up against the Lions.
Gene, I remember we were talking and we were previewing the Niners game on Sunday Night Football, and you were saying the teams that give Buffalo issues normally are teams that are really physical, right? We saw what Baltimore did to them early on in the year. That Rams game on Sunday, it necessarily wasn't Kyren Williams gashing them. It was a little bit of everything. Stafford was unreal. Puka played tremendous. Kyren played well too. But what was it specifically that you think the Rams offense did that really gave Buffalo issue that Detroit, I'm sure, will try and do on Sunday?
Sean McVay knew exactly how to carve up the Bills' zone defense. The Bills don't play a lot of man-to-man, PJ, and when you have Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, and then you sprinkle in a little Kyren Williams, and you couple that with, hey, there really wasn't a pass rush from Buffalo, that was the result you were going to get. So, yes, the Bills traditionally have trouble with physical teams. Detroit actually can play that kind of style with their 1-2 punch at running back. This is a Bills defense that really isn't as bad as what you saw last week. Just how much will they rebound this week? And the concern, news out of Buffalo today, is that 2 of their players did not practice today, that being corner Rasul Douglas, also safety Taylor Rapp. So if the Bills are down 2 players in the secondary, this doesn't bode well going up against Detroit.
Sounds like a big Amon-Ra day maybe on Sunday against that Bills zone defense. Gene, we were talking about the game on your show last week, Rams and Bills. I told you I loved the over. I thought there were going to be a lot of points. Well, it turned out there were 86 points. This week, we got another high total, 54.5. It's the highest total of the season. I'm always worried about betting an over when we see one team just play like a crazy shootout kind of outlier game, even though certainly both of these teams are capable of dropping 30 points. Do you think we're in for another shootout, another game in the 30s, or do you think this is more so like a 27-24 type game?
I'm glad you brought this up, PJ. The answer is no. I don't see this being a shootout, even with these points. Follow me on this. And it's going to come off like I'm blaming the Bills' offense from last week. I'm not. But you look at the stats. James Cook carried the ball 6 times. Ray Davis didn't have a single carry. The Bills have been doing this. We're going to march down the field and kind of bleed you and limit the opposition's possessions. Well, they didn't do that. It was a shootout. It was a lot of fun to watch on television. But Sean McDermott always preaches complementary football. So I expect the Bills to actually kind of downshift, try to get the running game going. And he does try again. The Bills abandoned it really quick last week. So with that being said, 54 is high. I would take the under here.
I like that. And I'm so glad you brought up the Cook point, because that was going to be my question is the Rams don't have a very good run defense. And with the way the Bills have been running the ball this year, you thought Cook would be a great option on Sunday. Only had 6 carries. Josh Allen was the guy who did a lot of running. You see a lot of these teams, Gene, now in the NFL, especially with the extra game in the regular season, they tend to pick and choose their spots of when they want to use their quarterbacks, when they want to run their quarterbacks. Because Allen ran so much last week against the Rams, even though, again, this is a monster game this week against Detroit, and the Bills do tend to like to run him in big games like this. Could you see another double-digit rushing effort for Allen, or would you more so lean towards Cook on Sunday?
Honestly, the way it's kind of laying out right now, what is it? The Bills have a 15% chance of getting the 1 seed. I would not tempt fate here. You have a good running back in James Cook. You have a good between the tackles kid in Ray Davis. This is the way I would kind of go here. So Josh Allen run props here. Again, I would go under on these, PJ, but keep in mind, too, a lot of that is Allen just deciding, I don't like what I see. I'm going to take off here.
Yeah.
So, it depends on what the Lions kind of present to Buffalo defensively.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Speaking of Josh, he's obviously the heavy favorite after that game that he had on Sunday, minus 450 to win MVP. Gene, I think if they win and they beat Detroit, it's over. He could sit the final 3 games, and I think he's won the award. You beat the Chiefs and the Lions in the same season. I don't see how you don't get MVP. I guess my question would be, even if they lose to Detroit, do you pretty much think that he can wrap up the award if he has another great game?
Yeah, isn't that funny? The Bills lose, and yet Josh Allen, because he put up, this extraordinary performance, people are behind him. I think Chelsea Messenger had a good point on the network today that maybe some people are getting Lamar Jackson fatigue. If you're just measuring the numbers, Lamar Jackson's numbers are better. You have the better numbers, certainly, from Joe Burrow, but it's not necessarily a numbers award. If the Bills end up as a top 2 seed, he's on that short list with Jared Goff and Saquon Barkley, depending on what happens, of course, in the other conference here.
Yeah. All right, Gene. Before I let you go, who do you like to win the game on Sunday? Lions favored by 2.5. Lions, Bills, who you got?
I am going to take the Lions in the under 24-20, which will be an entertaining game, but it's not going to have the ridiculous offensive pace that we saw in Bills Rams.
Very good. Gene Battaglia, co-host of the Sports Bar. You can catch 3 to 6 p.m. weekdays on 95.7 The Fan in Rochester. Kind enough to join us here on Send It In. Gene, appreciate the time. I will talk to you in Danger later on in the day, my friend.
Sounds good, PJ.
All right, thanks, Gene. All right, guys, let's keep it going here on Send It In. We got some questions coming in from B-Mills. Love it. PJ, how do you like this 3-team moneyline parlay for the playoff? I know you like some dogs with the points, but this is just the home teams to win. Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. I would take Texas, and I would put them in there for Penn State, B-Mills. I would go Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Those are the 3 teams that I like to win. I'm nervous about Penn State. SMU's the last team into the field. Those teams tend to be pretty dangerous, especially when people don't think that maybe they're necessarily deserving of that final spot. And I'll talk about this over the next couple weeks leading into the playoff games. It kind of feels like where we are right now with James Franklin and Penn State is where John Calipari was at last year with Kentucky, heading into the NCAA tournament. He's kind of been there a while, even though Cal has had more success than Franklin has, obviously. He's won a national championship. But towards the later years there at Kentucky, it was a lot of first-round exits. It wasn't nearly as many Final Four appearances as a Kentucky fan wanted. And I think that Oakland loss obviously was the final straw. I think Franklin's kind of treading towards that a little bit, right? Where he's had these good teams, they've had some favorable schedules, they've had some good chances to make it to the playoff, and they've come up short. And now you look at their draw, SMU, Boise potentially, Georgia without their quarterback. This is kind of the year, I think, for Franklin. I could see them losing that game to SMU and then things kind of exploding in Penn State. So Penn State's the team I'm worried about. I would go Texas, I would go Notre Dame, and I would go Ohio State as the 3 teams if you're taking a money line parlay with the home teams. B-Mills, I also, you're saying you got Army as well, minus 5.5 against Navy. Do you think they cover? I do. I like Army. Anything under a touchdown, I think it's a great price with them. We have seen in years past, obviously with the familiarity of both of those teams, Army and Navy, if the quarterback on one team is just so clearly the best player on the field, he usually tends to dominate. And that's what Army has this year with Bryson Daly. He's just by far going to be the best player on the field on Saturday. I think he takes over. I think Army's the much better team. So I do like Army. I would take them. Anything under 7 again. So 5.5, 6.5. I like Army in that game against Navy. As for the NFL, we got Colts and Broncos. We've talked about this game already a couple times this week. I like Indianapolis +4 against Denver. I just think the Colts are going to keep this game close. I know they're a below 500 team. They're 6-7, but the Colts have played a lot of games close this year. A couple times they played the Texans have been close. That Patriots game the other week was close. The Jets game the other week was close. They've just been playing all these games, 2 points, 3-point kind of games. We're getting 4, and the season's on the line for Indianapolis. This is the team that you're trying to catch in the AFC wildcard race, and you're 2 games behind them with the chance to cut it to 1 and get the tiebreaker. I think this is going to be a field goal type game. I'll take the Colts +4. Bills and Lions, we were just talking about this game with Gene. It's going to be epic. I'll take the Lions -2.5. I think anything under 3 is a good bet with Detroit. They're basically saying that these two teams are even, right? If you're given 2, maybe 2.5 points at home field, because the Lions right now, with how good they are, have one of the best home fields in the NFL. They're saying that these would be even teams on a neutral field. I'm just not buying that. I think the Lions are better. Defenses are probably comparable. Lions offense, I think, is going to be the best unit on the field. So I think anything under 3, I think we're pricing the Lions a little lower than they should be. I'll take Detroit -2.5. Steelers and Eagles, give me Philly -5.5 against Pittsburgh. I know when you're getting the Steelers with all these points and Tomlin's the head coach, it's really easy to take Pittsburgh, but Philly's just that good. And I think a lot of people are going to look too much into the Carolina game from last weekend. That was just a bad spot for Philly. I expected them to come out flat, and they did. You look at what they've done against some of the AFC North teams this year. Cincinnati in their building blew them out. Baltimore in their building blew them out. I think they're going to have their way with the Steelers as well. I like Philly -5. Patriots and Cardinals is an interesting game. Arizona favored by 5.5 with the total of 46. Arizona obviously was 6-4, looking like they were going to win the NFC West, and now all of a sudden their season is kind of unraveling on them. Kyler Murray just in his career has not been good at all in late November and the month of December. The spread feels about right. New England's been a pretty pesky dog this season. I kind of like the over in the game. I think both teams are going to be able to score. No play on the side. I think we get some points. I'll go over 46 in Cardinals and Patriots. Packers at Seattle for Sunday Night Football. Green Bay favored by 3. It's going to be a really good game. Seattle, you know, obviously they're on a 4-game win streak. They're playing really well. They won 2 games against Arizona. They beat the Jets. They beat San Francisco. And Mike McDonald's finally starting to put his blueprint in that Seattle defense. They're starting to understand his scheme, and they're playing a lot better, and their defense is humming right now. What's been weird about Seattle this season is how bad they have been at home. But a lot of those games have been the 4:25 p.m. Eastern games. This is at night in prime time. And usually teams, primetime in Seattle, don't fare very well unless it's San Francisco. We're getting the key number of 3. I lean towards the Seahawks plus the points. Bears and the Vikings. We got Minnesota favored by 7 at home against Chicago. I like the Bears +7. I'm mad at myself for loving the Bears so much last week because everybody liked the Bears, and when everybody's on a team as bad as the Bears, they tend to let you down. Well, after that performance against the Niners last week, and with the way Minnesota's playing, nobody's going to be on the Bears on Monday night. But you think about what Chicago's done against the division this year. Lost to 1 by Green Bay, lost to 3 to Minnesota and to Detroit. I just think 7's too many points. I'll take Chicago plus the 7. And then Falcons and Raiders, I'm going to go with the under in this game. Kirk Cousins has obviously been playing terrible for Atlanta. He's got 0 touchdowns and 7 picks in his last 4 games. The Raiders, it looks like, could be going with Desmond Ridder playing against his former team. I think Las Vegas's pass rush is going to be tough for Atlanta to deal with. And I think the Falcons, their offense is going to struggle. They lean more so on Bijan. They just want to escape Vegas with the win. So I will take Atlanta I'll take the under in that game, under 44 in Falcons and Raiders. All right, let's talk some college football bowl games here on Send It In. Again, college football playoffs getting all the hype right now, deservedly so. We're going to break down those games down plenty over the next week and a half or so. But looking at some of the other bowl games, because you can get some value on some of these lines right now while people aren't paying as close attention to some of these games. We got Cal and UNLV on December 18th in the Art of Sport LA Bowl, and I like Cal -2 against the Rebels. UNLV, their head coach Barry Odom went off to Purdue. He's the new coach there. So this is one of those cases where you have a bowl game without the head coach, some of the coaching staff, players in the portal, going up against Cal, who has been one of the more underrated teams in the ACC this season. You look at Cal, and if some of these one-possession games would have gone their way, I mean, they could be like a 9 or 10 win team this season. Under Justin Wilcox, you're always going to have a good defense. Even though Cal's quarterback isn't going to be playing, I still like Cal more so than UNLV without the coaching staff there. So I'll take Cal -2 against UNLV. Fresno State and Northern Illinois on December 23rd playing in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. We're going to take Fresno +3 against Northern Illinois. A lot of this is because I think people are going to look at this game. Obviously, people are going to want to bet it. They're going to want action. And everybody's going to bet Northern Illinois because what's the one thing that you know about these two teams is you know that Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame early on in the season. These two teams, they're kind of contrasting a little bit. Northern Illinois wants to run the ball a ton. Fresno State wants to throw the ball a ton. You're getting a key number here, 3. I just think this continues to go up. So maybe hold off and don't bet Fresno yet because I think people are going to continue to bet Northern Illinois, but definitely going to be on Fresno's side against NIU. Oklahoma -8.5 against Navy. I really like the Sooners in this matchup. Whenever you get a military academy school against a big brand like Oklahoma and they're kind of playing in one of these bowl games, it's getting lost in the shuffle. You certainly worry about motivation. You know Navy. You know anytime a military academy team takes the field, they're going to be motivated. They're going to be ready to go. But you worry about the teams like Oklahoma. But I actually think Oklahoma is going to be ready to go in this game. I think Brett Venables did enough to save his job with that win against Bama. Next year is going to be a big year, though, for Venables. And I think he wants to start it on the right foot, get a big win in a bowl game, get some momentum heading into the offseason. I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be too much for Navy to deal with. I think they're going to have a really tough time scoring. And even with all the receivers injured and the guys opting out and Oklahoma not having a lot of their dudes on offense, I think they'll be able to score enough against Navy. So I like Oklahoma -8.5 against Navy. Iowa State, give me the Cyclones +3.5 against Miami. It looks like Cam Ward's going to play. I'm not convinced that necessarily is going to be the case. And even if he does, I don't really want to lay 3.5 points with Miami. I don't think Iowa State is all that good, but the problem is I trust Matt Campbell more than I trust Mario Cristobal, and I don't trust that Miami defense one bit. They are terrible. They can't stop anybody. I think Iowa State runs the ball, possesses the ball, chews the clock, and gets enough stops on defense on that Miami offense to keep this within the number, maybe even win it outright. So I like Iowa State plus the points. Also like Michigan plus the 10.5 against Bama. We talked about this game earlier on in the week. If you're a team like Bama, obviously, especially after you beat Georgia, you thought for sure you'd be in the college football playoff. Now you got to turn around. You got to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Even though it is Michigan, they're obviously having a down season. I don't know if Bama's going to be focused. I don't know if they're going to be ready to go in this game. Whereas Michigan, I think coming off that Ohio State win, they're going to ride all that momentum. They got a chance to beat another big-time school, another big-time program. I think Michigan's going to show up. If Sharon Moore can beat Ohio State and Bama in his first year, that's a hell of a resume, even though they've had a tough season. I'll take Michigan plus the points against Bama. And then finally, give me LSU -1.5 against Baylor. Brian Kelly, again, another coach. Big season upcoming for BK next year in Baton Rouge. Things didn't go quite as planned this year for LSU. They've really struggled to defend teams with running quarterbacks. Luckily for him, Baylor doesn't really have that athletic of a quarterback. Their offense isn't all that dynamic, so I think it's a good matchup for LSU. I like the Tigers -1.5 against Baylor. All right, let's talk some college hoops here on Send It In as we dive into PJ's Glass Ball. And once again, the reason we're talking college basketball futures on the show today is because since 2004, when the Week 6 AP poll has dropped, which it did on Monday, 100% of the national champions have come out of the top 12 in the AP poll. Tennessee, Auburn, Iowa State, Duke, Kentucky, Marquette, Bama, Gonzaga, Florida, Kansas, Purdue, and Oregon is your top 12. So we thought we'd do a little play or fade on those top 12 teams to tell you who are the teams I think can win the title and who are the teams that I'm not buying to win the national title. We'll start with Tennessee. Right now, they're the number one team in the country, but I would fade Tennessee. It just feels like the same old Vols team to me. Tennessee could go undefeated in the regular season, and I would still not buy into them because Rick Barnes is like Matt Painter in the tournament. And I know Matt Painter just made it to the national championship, but he also had one of the all-time great players in Zach Edey. Tennessee is a good team. I certainly wouldn't take them over some of these other teams, and I'm not trusting them in March, so we are fading Tennessee. Auburn is absolutely a play. Now, they're a play for March, and if the tournament started today, Auburn would be my national champion. I wouldn't bet them, though, at plus 800 yet because the SEC is going to be such a gauntlet this season. The teams are going to go through peaks and valleys. They're going to go through ups and downs. I think there's going to be opportunity to get a better price on Auburn. So certainly a team that I think can win the national title, but at their current price at plus 800, I wouldn't bet them, but I would absolutely play on Auburn. Iowa State at 20-1. I like the Cyclones as well. Iowa State was a big surprise last season. They brought a ton of players back. They were a top 10 team heading into the season, and they look every bit of it. Them and Tennessee right now, the only two teams, according to Ken Pom, top 10 offensive and defensive efficiency. And that's the key with Iowa State. You know their defense is going to be elite. It's can they score enough points? So far from what we've seen, it's looked like their offense is for real. So I do like the Cyclones. I would play them. Duke, I would play as well. No team's got a higher ceiling this year in college basketball than Duke. With all those stud freshmen, all those lottery picks that they have, some veteran pieces as well. I think John Shire is a more underrated coach than people give him credit for. I love how Duke has challenged themselves in the non-conference this year. They've played Auburn, they played Kansas, they played Kentucky. They're getting some good experience. It's only going to help them more and more down the road. Play on Duke to win the national title. Kentucky's a play too. We talked about them before the season started at 35-1. I love this Kentucky team. I love what Mark Pope did in the transfer portal, bringing in all these seniors, all these veterans, and they meshed really well. He brought in some three-point shooters like Kobe Brea. He brought in some defensive stoppers like Lamont Butler. He brought in some athletic bigs. He brought in some really good wings. They got a nice mix and combo of everything. And is there a team out there in college basketball who's got two better neutral site wins than Kentucky with Gonzaga and Duke? Really good resume and a team that I absolutely love. Play on Kentucky. Marquette and Bama are going to be two fades for me. Marquette, I'm not big on this season, even though Cam Jones is a beast. Just doesn't feel like Marquette quite has all the pieces. And Shaka Smart, ever since he made that Final Four run with VCU, has not been good in the tournament. Bama, I'm going to fade as well. They were the number 2 team coming into the country, a team that made the Final Four last year, had one of the National Player of the Year candidates in Mark Sears. They got a loaded roster, but their defense isn't quite as good as I thought it would be up to this point. They got to make a big adjustment, big improvement there. I will fade Bama. I'm also going to fade Gonzaga as well. The Zags, they play some games where they look really good, and they play some games where you're just kind of disappointed with them. They do have some really good players, but especially at the price at 12-1 for Gonzaga to win the title, I'm going to fade the Zags. Florida, I think, is an interesting team. They're very much like Bama. Elite offensive team. They play at a fast tempo. It all comes down to the defense with the Gators. I love their backcourt, though, with Walter Clayton Jr. and Elijah Martin, who transferred over from FAU. We all know in March it's about guard play. Florida's got two really good ones in Clayton and Martin. If their defense can figure out the Gators at 35-1, that's a really good price. Kansas at 15-1. Kansas early on in the year was really solid. Then we've watched them get dominated from tip to finish against Creighton and Missouri. I'm never going to count Bill Self out, but it does feel like Kansas has a lot of ways to go. They definitely could win the national title, but as of right now, I'm going to fade them. Purdue is an absolute fade. It's Matt Painter in the tournament once again. And also, away from Mackey Arena, Purdue is just not the same team than they are when they're at home. Then we have the Oregon Ducks, who are the number 12 team in the AP poll. I think Oregon's interesting. Really good non-conference. They had the win over Bama in Vegas. They've been very impressive so far. Dana Altman's a very good tournament coach. Oregon right now is 20th in offensive efficiency and 26th in defensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom. If the Ducks can improve a little bit, That's a team that could be dangerous. 66 to 1. That's a good price on the Ducks. I think if there's a long shot to sprinkle, it would be the Ducks and the Gators, two teams to look at. Right now, though, if I had to make a play on teams to win the national championship, Auburn and Kentucky, the two teams that I would look at. All right, let's go to Model Making Money. Check in now with Matt Horner joining us here on Send It In. And Matt, what are the 5-star plays that BetQL has for us today?
Yeah, so the model, we're going to go to college basketball today. Once again, just a numbers play here by the model. San Diego State laying 15 points against Cal Baptist. The model has the Aztecs as 19.5-point favorites. So getting 15 points, again, going to trigger a 5-star play and simply a numbers play by the model.
All right, very good. Matt, what about for tonight? Anything that you like? Any best bets?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to college basketball as per usual. I'm going to take 3 teams that nobody in the world would ever want to bet. Duquesne -5 against Maine here. Again, I preach all the time about these types of lines. Duquesne is 2-7. I've bet on them twice this year when they're favorites, and they've covered and won in both of those. They're going up against Maine, a 6-5 team, a team with 6 wins. I think a lot of people on such a crappy slate today are going to be looking at games like this. They're going to see a team with 6 wins, getting 5 points, getting plus money against a team that only has 2 wins, and they're going to take Maine. I think the opposite is true. So give me Duquesne -5. Also going to take Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns. I got them at -3.5. They're now -4.5. This is a 1-8 basketball team. They've won a single game all season. They've been horrendous. They're taking on Southeastern Louisiana, who is 4-5. Also not a very good team, but they do have 4 wins. But now Louisiana here, 1-8, is laying 4.5 points against them, and I think there's a reason for that. So give me the 1-8 team laying 4.5 against the 4-5 team there. And Doug Gottlieb, the guy, the podcaster turned coach, Green Bay +5.5 against Milwaukee here. I think people don't really care much for Gottlieb in the first place, and now that he's making national headlines by benching the nation's leading scorer in Anthony Roy, people are just going to want to fade that team. They're 2-8 anyway. They can't cover. They can't win. They stink. Taking on Milwaukee, a 6-4 team. This line also going down 5.5 to 4.5 now. Green Bay +5.5. I will take that all day against Milwaukee.
All right, very good. A lot of good stuff there. Limited college slate, but Matt finding us 3 good looks in college hoops tonight. What about tomorrow, Matt, and Thursday night football? Any bets that you like, side total props, and Rams 49ers?
Yeah, so I already bet the 49ers -2.5. I know it's at -3 now, so if you want to take the 3, I don't really mind that. Has a chance of pushing, obviously, more than the 2.5, but I like the 49ers here certainly to win this game. Rams coming off that big win against Buffalo, so people are going to want to start backing them. You know, that offense put up a billion points. They love the wide receivers. They love Matt Stafford, Sean McVay. People still down on San Francisco. They beat the Bears, and obviously my Bears, I mean, who really cares if they beat the Bears? We stink. I think people just love the Rams so much, but 49ers are favorite here for a reason, even with all their injuries. So give me the 49ers there. I guess at -3 right now, I'd still take that. And Deebo Samuel, a guy that people are just kind of leaving for dead. They think the guy's washed and everything like that. Rams defense is horrendous against pretty much everything. Again, we saw that last week. Buffalo was just destroying them every which way. They lost, but they were still putting up tons of yards, tons of points. I think Deebo Samuel could go off in this game, and I wouldn't mind laddering him. His receiving yards are at 48.5. You can ladder him up to 110 plus yards receiving at 10 to 1 right now odds, and I think that's worth maybe a quarter unit sprinkle there on Deebo Samuel to torch the Rams defense. So give me the 49ers and give me Samuel over receiving yards and laddered.
Very good. A lot of good stuff there. Matt joining us on Send It In. Matt, appreciate it, man.
Sure. Thanks, PJ.
You got it. For those people who want to continue to bet but don't have the time to research each individual game, you need to download the BetQL app. It ranks each game on a 1 to 5 star scale based on its unbeatable analysis from spreads and over-unders to player props. Stay up to date and bet confidently with BetQL's help. Guys, got some breaking news on the show. Bill Belichick finalizing a deal to become North Carolina's new head coach, according to 24/7 Sports. So listen to BetQL throughout the day. I'm sure a lot of reaction to that. Real quick, get into our favorite plays. We're going to breeze through them. Fred VanVleet over 17.5 points is our prop lock. Fresno State going to be my dog of the day, +3 in their bowl game against Northern Illinois. Give me the Rockets on the money line tonight against the Warriors. Houston has lost 15 straight games to the Warriors, yet they're favored tonight. Give me Houston to get the job done. Thanks again to Gene Battaglia and Matt Horner for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We will see you tomorrow.